Hello, welcome to another video where we're going to talk about some Store Champs lists. Because Store Champs is around and I know a lot of people really enjoy them. I'm always a big fan of the social aspect of a Store Champs, getting out there and just getting to see people, and I'm just not someone who really ever leaves the house unless I have a reason to, so giving me a go play some like 4-6 rounds of Lorcana is a very good reason for me. So I enjoy them for those things, but I think people like to bring a lot of different stuff. People like to pet deck and they like to have a lot of fun. There are some, I'm sure, that are very competitive, but overall they're just a fun experience for the community, aren't they? And they're like a glorified local sometimes. So yeah, we get to go through some awesome lists, and I think what I found really interesting about Store Champs is I've seen it on Twitter and I've seen loads of other spaces, how much like sapphire steel is being enjoyed there. I think a lot of people, it's their pet deck, as a lot of people's like really just quite passionate about it, and I think a lot as well got to the same points that many of us did, where many of the sapphire steel sort of people who play it a lot, the sort of diehards, I guess, where it just always felt like it was a couple steps away from being perfect or a couple steps from being great. So Store Champs was like the best environment to play that in. And this is someone from the Kiwi Bird server. I did ask for some lists, only a couple sent me, so I went and grabbed some that I quite like the look of, to be honest with you. And this was a sapphire steel one that's awesome. There's so much going on there. I think the one jump ahead is pretty cool as well. That's kind of just doing the same aspect that the Blurple list have done, where if you really want to ramp on 2, you give yourself that option to have 9 ramp cards on 2, and also it means that you're not having to full send 7 away, because the likely chances you're going to stand with one of those cards, which meant you could craft the hand being a better, more optimal hand. So it's really cool in there. I've opted to play the Scrooges, but a lot of people as well don't like it. And to be honest with you, I can be on the team don't like Scrooge. The 4-cost uninkable. It's great to just ramp and play it down. It shuts down a lot of aggro decks. And to be honest, even into Blurple, unless they into the unknown it just sits there questing. There's no real good body in the entire game of Lorcana to trade up with a Scrooge. There's no like 5-6 or 5-7 that I can think of. The best you can do is buff up maybe your cheaper characters like Rafiki or Captain Hook or something and send them in. So awesome body there. The Wasabi, I'm assuming again as well, like I find with Store Champs, you might know the players that are turning up and the players that are going to be there. So 3 Wasabis is probably for a Chromodogs deck that maybe the player knew was going to be there. I believe they ended up getting top 4 with this list, but that was just such a mad card to include. Then again, though, for Sapphire Steel, it's more bodies that have evasion, and I find with Wasabi, once you play them out, if you've got the Tinkerbell out, you know, that's 1 damage, then Wasabi can take out a Genie, a purple Genie, so to be honest with you, that's all pretty fine. Besides that, there's a lot of standard stuff in there as well. I've seen a lot go with this list, and what they do is they take out the 2-cost ramp, they take out the docks, and they put Chicha in, and you put 4 Beyond the Horizons, and you just try and play a steady ramp game of Chicha on 2, Pleakley, into Donald, into playing your 7-drops and playing Beyond the Horizon, which is really cool. I do have a list that sort of does something similar to that, which I'm going to show in a couple of seconds, but nearing the end of the video. Actually, I think it's right at the end of the list, but really cool. Like I say, it's nice to see Sapphire Steel sort of picking up quite a bit in in the Store Champs regions. It's really cool, and maybe a lot of people are going to get excited and go, actually that was a really good run, maybe I'll take that to Milwaukee, and maybe we'll see some more Sapphire Steel hitting the top cut. But of course we're going to go into some lists that I don't believe I could really avoid, and I could like pretend like they weren't going to be on a video about Store Champs list. Which is, I've got a couple Blurple lists, and this one is from the Store Championship in Chelmsford, which is like about an hour away, which was one I'd tend to make if there wasn't another one closer to me on, which is really cool. And I just like, I think for me, I ran a Blurple list that was a 3-liner. I don't think it's like crazy to be doing that. All the Blurple lists that are winning, the one that won the Bologna won, like everything that's top cutting, they're all these 3-liners with like mad one-offs and stuff. It's just crazy, where I kind of went from, I had that deck building idea that I kind of followed in Ed's belief of, you know, everything's 2-liner, everything's 4x, then you maybe have a couple 2x's if you want, but you know, you try to make it as consistent as you can. You only included cards you needed. You didn't really veer off to have 1 cost and stuff like that, 1 copy of something in there. And then going into set 9 as well, I kind of felt the same. I felt we're not drawing as much in this set. Maybe having 1 copy of something is not great. You know, we want to 4x everything that we want. But no, it seems like Blurple, the best way to build it is to end up with a list like this, where you've got loads of varied options. I think saying that, though, you can still do things like, so we have 4 Tipo, 4 Sail, 1 jump, 1 jump ahead. Yeah, It's hard to say. But the thing is, like, those could be paired together. If you were laying this out on a table, you could just pair those 4 cards together, those 9 cards, sorry, together, and say, well, they all do the same thing. And I think there's a sort of realm to be said as well. Elsa and the 5-cost Ursula, you just pair them together, and they're kind of, in a sense, trying to do the same thing. The reason why they're in the deck is the same purpose. So, you know, it may be looking like there's 1 copy here, whatever, 1 copy there. I think the only thing that really is like spicy one-off type thing is that you have 1 copy of Elsa, because a lot of people do. I feel like you need to have 1 or 2 copies in there. Just that fear of her being down there. I've always thought she was very good into aggro. You know, if you're doing the line of ramp on 2, Genie into the unknown, 5-cost Elsa, then you shift, and then you Hades, and then you know, and you're just constantly like, I'm going to disrupt you and slow down how much lore you can get. But she's a very expensive uninkable, so having her as 1 is fine. Shifting to sing 2nd star is pretty cool as well. All those things are pretty great. So I think that's kind of the only thing that's a one-off here. And even in that as well, you've got all of these different 4-drops. You've got 2 Ben and 2 Madam Mim. I think even that, the 2 Madam Mim and 2 Ben, like, they are different cards, so they have different attributes, they do different things. But in a sense, you're trying to achieve a very similar role with them, is probably against more of the aggressive decks. You know, you slam them down and here's a body. The support is pretty good from Ben to buff up Elsa and take out take out like a Tiana or whatever it is you need to take out. A Pluto, whatever it is you need to be taking out at that point. Whereas Madam Mim as well is like this 3/7 body that's very hard to remove. It can trade up and bell move damage around and sing into the unknown. So in a sense, those 2 as well, again, are just pairing up and doing the same thing. So we're in this sort of format now where, you know, when everyone's just playing these 4x like 2-liner lists, you can build like this. I think it's very appropriate to build like this. And I think as well, there's like all the minor little things, like there's 2 Rafikis in there and there's 4 Basils. I would say this list is primarily more teched towards the mirror. I saw like Federico, I think I'm pronouncing that right, the Italian player who won Birmingham last year. I probably got that wrong, I'm really sorry. But he was doing the same, as like 4 Basil to Rafiki, because just Basil is very, very good in the mirror. He's not bad into aggro, it's still a body, but you can buff up Tipo, Elsa, Genie, whatever. But just putting the Rafikis down usually tend to shut off things like Nalas and anything from like questing very early on. But Basil in the mirror is, you know, being able to buff the Elsa and all your characters to be able to trade better and win that evasion war is just pretty good. So all around, I'd say pretty good list. It's interesting with the Argos as well. I've seen some people completely drop them. Some people try and Keeda instead. That means the Hypnotic Strengths are down to about 3 copies as well. And, you know, we're just kind of going around in this little funny circle with, well, people are sort of dropping illusions and I don't need them. I still play the 4 copies. I feel like that's not, for me, been a point where I can cut things, especially in my lists, because I've got like a couple Developing Brains or a couple Visions. I'm like, I'd rather cut down on them because they are great for scrying, they are great for putting the consistency of the deck up, but to be honest with you, they are probably the first thing that I feel like I can cut. But there's none in here, still making room for some interesting stuff, and I'm very grateful that this gentleman has put 2 second star, 2 finders keepers, because we are at this point now where like people are just playing these insanely greedy lists where it's like 4 finders, 2 second stars. I played someone on the sim we don't talk about where they had 4 finders and 3 second stars in the list, and it's like, okay, well, just that's how you're going to win the mirror, because you know the resources, being able to put more on the board, put more pressure, find more answers, it's kind of what wins you those mirrors. So, and I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. Most people are going into a day going, I'm expecting that maybe half my matchups will be Blurple, or at least my top cut matchups will be Blurple. So teching very heavily for the mirror is never a bad thing, and that's also what's spawning all these aggro decks that are trying to take advantage of Blurple being so popular, because I think I can run them down. So that's pretty great. We've got another one of this, a friend of mine, John, that I play against quite a lot. It was battering me quite consistently when I was playing Amber Steel, but this is really cool. And again, like I like this layout more, actually. I can't tell if this is a, I don't know if this would be a 3-liner. Yeah, this is still enough one-offs, but I like this layout more. It presents it quite nicely. But the 2 Elsa, 2 Monstro, like I say, pretty standard to have 2 Monstro at this point. I feel like 2 Monstro, though, is, I don't know if anyone else has been, that it really helps you in green-blue. It really kind of pushes them out of the game. And even in the mirror, sometimes it can really punish someone from questing with Hades or Bell, whatever. But I feel like, you know, I don't see as much green-blue. It's probably a point where if you needed the room, you could just drop them and just put, like, whatever else you want in the deck, because I'm just not seeing as much green-blue. It's a card that I find inked quite a bit, but to be honest with you, it's pretty standard. I think people are expecting it a lot more as well. So completely understand the 2 Monstro is fine. I'm just kind of going on a tangent here of, you know, trying to think one step ahead further and then step another ahead, you know, and one step further than that as well. But no, 2 Monstro seems absolutely fine, and it's inkable compared to the Elsa, which is 2 cost, which I've always found in the mirror, if I'm going into the mirror and they have 2 Elsas and I have just one, I feel kind of way more behind. You know, they have another card that's a big character bomb, you know, it's quest for 3, it's a 4/6, and then it also can do things like stop you singing second star, can freeze your characters from using like Dumbo effect or whatever, turn them sideways to be very good trades. You could later on in the game, you know, you're racing, maybe you're like 6-7 lore away from winning, and you play it down, freeze, and you full quest, and so it's very awkward for you to answer this board now. So I really quite like the 8 cost Elsa in the mirror. And also again into aggro, like this build, I did talk to John, and he managed to win my locals one because we were in Bologna. I'm not saying that I'd have won it if I was there. I probably wouldn't. I'm not having the best run at Store Champs right now. But yeah, I managed to chat with him, and he said he teched a lot more for the aggro matchup, and he took the Iagos out and put the 4-cost Elsa in there, which is really cool. Actually, I played against him at locals, and it seemed very impactful, being basically a 6/4, you know, chomping down things like Pluto and stuff like that, and it's still an easy strength target. It's a genie strength target, but you know, if they're able to establish it and you can't strength it, you know, just going to chew through the what's it called, like the Pluto, or you can chew through the Tiana. If you're able to Basil buff it up to 8 and then hit Tiana, that's enough to do it without having to pay any Tiana tax. So it's a very interesting, cool card, very good for the aggro matchup. And he did mention that it's also pretty good against green blue as well, because you've got like 6 is quite a magic number for a lot of their things. Maybe you 1/1 a Clarabelle, but do you want to see a 4 drop? I think I'd rather 1-run a Clarabelle and just take it out. You know, silence a lot of their singers. Even, I mean, it survives hitting a Hades, but besides that, you know, Basil, everything basically gets removed the minute they turn it sideways if they can't deal with this Elsa. So I think that's a really cool card to put in. I think as well, not a lot of people would practice against it. I don't think people would see it much. But yeah, besides that, very standard stuff. 4 Basil is kind of the key, and I learned that after Bologna as well, that 4 Basil is pretty impactful to play, unless you're very lucky at finding Basil turn 1. But it's very much, it can make or break a mirror. Being able to do that, like support power buff and take out a genie or something is just so strong. On top of that as well, he's done this thing that I mentioned, you know, 4 hypnotic strengths rather than 4 developed and 3 hypnotic strengths. In my opinion, yeah, I'd rather cut down. A develop is a very good card to make the deck more consistent, but if I'm cutting, I'm probably going to be cutting these cards that can also be labeled as filler. So an awesome list, and again, like, just I feel like I had to cover a couple Blurple lists. It would have been you know, untruthful to not mention that there's some Blurple lists out there that are winning. But yeah, again, very cool, very standard. I don't think he'd make much changes. I think maybe you would change I think maybe you mentioned, or what I would do at least, if you're going into mirrors a bit more, I would change the Elsa out for Iagos again. But besides that, it seems like a very perfect list. And it's surprising. There is a lot of aggro at Store Champs. I think a lot of people just want to turn up, race out, and get their promo and leave. But then there was so much like aggro killer stuff and stuff. I think he played against a Ruby Amethyst Flinger Dingers type deck, and it's like all these things that kind of just built themselves to build aggro, and then they're like, oh, top 8, what's my match? Well, it's against Blurple, because you beat all the aggro decks that could beat the Blurple, and now you have to play against the Blurple decks to get your mat. So it's a very interesting environment for these Store Champs. I would mainly think of bringing a Blurple killer rather than an aggro killer, because you know, it's just gonna be a lot of Blurple, isn't there? And aggro is aggro, it's always everywhere. This is from a lovely young gentleman, one of my locals, called Michael, and he managed to beat me to get into top 4, which was great. I played against, I play him against him like every week. I like that he's still on the Sapphire steel hype, and the Scar build as well, which is really awesome. I remember our game though, he said, you know, I haven't changed it much, and then he slammed down a Nala on 2. I was like, that thing alone can just win you the game. It was a very fun game, back and forth. Yeah, I think I managed to walk away over 2-1 from that. I think at one point I think I just stuck at 5 ink or something, but to be honest, he played it very, very well. Doc spamming into like Nala, Lawrence, and just getting loads of bodies, and the board is great, and then hiding it all behind Lady Cluck or Bagheera. All that stuff's really awesome. Lady Cluck is a pretty powerful card if you can't get anything to stick on the board. Fire the Cannons is pretty great as well, just to start throwing damage out there, getting rid of like Basil support, or if you try and get an Iago to stick, or you know, you've hit something and then you've got 2 damage and they fire the cannons, Doc. You know, all round's pretty good, flooding the board, getting loads of pressure, getting loads of lore. And Jasmine as well, like, just as a high roll is so amazing, especially against, I was bringing Blurple to the Store Champs, and if they get it off, there's no, Blurple doesn't have a deal 2 damage, deal that thing, real answer to it anywhere, you know, it's just, it happens, and it just, you know, so something's going on in the background. It just happens, and it's just removed from the board. You don't have any sort of deal 2 damage, remove something card. Sorry, I really should learn how to edit as well, because that's just all going to be not sounding very correct, but it's fine. You just have to let them do Jasmine Shift. They get a giant hand size, they throw everything on the board, and then they just out resource you. They can get that sort of machine going on, and then they can clear the Jasmine and then just keep throwing more stuff. And Vincenzo's a huge body as well, so awesome list, really cool. I like that he stuck with it. I think he does have a couple games maybe where, you know, his hand is play dock and discard 2 scars, but you know, without the Hades, it feels like this is a more aggressive, like, aggro version, and to be honest, it puts the work in. You flood that board early, you play Lady Cluck or Bagheera, and you just get over the finish line in a good amount of time. So really awesome list to see. Hope he sticks with it. Hope he keeps working on the Sapphire Steel, and maybe one day when he's able to go to a DLC or something, we can see him in day 2. And one last list is, I just wanted to mention, this was someone that I stayed with in Bologna, and we were all playing together, and I thought this list was really cool, and I haven't told them I'm going to put this in the video, but I want to because I think it's a really cool list. We practiced against it a couple times. I hope I'm not like leaking the source. I hope not. If not, he's got to open his meta file on this. I believe he got it to a top 8, but we played against this in we were like in our place we were staying at, and I just thought it was like the coolest list. It looks like he's done a few additions to it. Like, I hadn't really thought about much. We played like the first game, and I was like, Amber Sapphire, that sounds kind of cool. Like, I'm pretty sure this, yeah, I know Thunderbolt, and that was like the only card I really could think of that would go in the deck. But I just really liked it. Like, the first game, I didn't really know what they were going to do. They get all this support set up with like Basil, Chicha and stuff, and then I forget these little interactions. Like, support can be applied to your opponents, they apply it to yours, and they World's Greatest Criminal Mind anything you can. And then they can get to this point where they have the Judy Hopps card that restands characters, and they can just keep restanding things, and just, you know, quest restand, and it's just so cool. You know, if you're missing the Elsa, the Hades, or maybe you've already used the Elsa and the Hades on targets that you thought were valid, like things like Thunderbolt or things like the Mini, or, you know, a Surfer Stitch, and then they just kind of get you in this lock where they just aggro you out and win the game. I thought it was really cool. I thought it was very different. I'm always asking about a million times, like, what's this aggro matchup like, because I don't see how it survives an aggro matchup, but I think there's still some pretty cool stuff in there. If I noticed as well, there's a lot of Sapphire Steel decks doing the same thing. You play a 1-drop, you play your Chicha, you play Pleakley, you play Donald, and you've got this fairly wide board. You've drawn a couple cards, and you've got support as well, so you can start like attacking in, and you're also at the point where you can Hades anything. You'd Hades like Tiana, or Hades a purple genie in like a purple steel deck, and into the other decks, you know, Thunderbolt's just a really awesome character, being a 3/7. And then you've got some Stitch from card draw. You end up resourcing pretty well, and even like Chicha and Kida, protected by a Thunderbolt, is like a card a turn, and you also get to pick the card out of 2 that you get. So just, oh well, I have not seen that Corella in there. I don't remember him playing that, but awesome. I just wanted to like showcase this list because I thought it was really cool. I hope he appreciates me putting it on this video, or yeah, I hope he's fine with me doing it, because I just thought it was one of the spicier lists I've seen this set. Of course, Blurple does really great. We get it. Blurple's awesome. And then there's like aggro decks that beat Blurple, yada yada yada. But there's loads of fun stuff as well still happening with Amber Sapphire, and like loads of just like red green, like Clarabelle stuff, the green steel stuff that LD is working on. There's lots of fun stuff to be had at Store Champs, I think. And it's very much the environment to test these decks out and play them, where the stakes are sort of very minimal. It's just sort of not minimal, but you know what I mean. It's not, you're not winning a £1,000 card or anything like that. So yeah, just an awesome list. I think, like, I'm surprised as well how much fun stuff you can do with Amber Sapphire, and I'm surprised as well Chicha's pretty popular, I think. I think a lot of people are holding back Chicha because they think he gets Fire the Cannons, but to be honest with you, it's just Amber Steel that Fire the Cannons it. And maybe you prefer in that matchup they're doing that instead of just putting more. If they Fire the Cannons on 2, they're not playing a Nala, you know, so maybe it's not that bad. And then, you know, Blurple aren't really going to do it. They have to Elsa Exert and take it out. And by that time, you probably got the value out of it anyway. So I think we might be in a position where Cheech is kind of quite cool and quite useful again. And I've seen a lot of the Sapphire Steel decks make use of that as well. But yeah, this is just a few Store Champs lists that took my eye. Of course, Blurple is good. Probably the right pick at a Store Champs if you want to win the mat. But if not, there's loads of fun to be had. Sapphire Steel was seeming very popular there. And there's loads of spice as well.